Okay. Sorry for that delay, guys. I'm not really sure what sort of led to that. But in any case, thank you very much for joining into the discussion today. Very, very happy to welcome Satish to the Kraftshala community. I'll keep my notes sort of very brief. Satish is a graduate of ISB, graduated, I think, in 2003, went to work for some amazing companies, including Microsoft, Yahoo, Kumli Media, which I remember engaging with back when I was working at Nestle, and eventually started a YOptima. YOptima is a programmatic first growth partner for marketing companies in India and across the world. This discussion I'm particularly excited by for a couple of reasons. One is because programmatic itself has gradually but inevitably started dominating marketing in a lot of ways. Of course, we could see this trend in more developed markets over the last 2 or 3 years. And in India, it has also sort of picked up. You can see it in the number of our students who are now involved in some way or the other with programmatic advertising. But also because Satish himself runs a company, YOptima, which has an amazing hiring process. Over the last couple of years, very few companies have run the kind of well-detailed, amazing case study kind of hiring process that YOptima does. Not all of our students have done well there. So over the years, the people who have gone on and joined the company have done quite well, and so we're very eager at some point to give that chance to you guys. So it'll be amazing to you to hear from him. And we've lost about 12 or 13 minutes, but still I hope the rest of the discussion is engaging. So very great welcome to you, Satish, and look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot, Varun. I'm really excited and very eagerly looking forward to this particular conversation. And I wish if this was face-to-face, I would have loved it. But I know that this format is virtual, and so that's cool too. And really, excited to see all of you guys on this call. And I think there are 4 scrolls of videos that are there. So I know that I'm probably not seeing a lot of others. But folks, please pause me at any point of time as I go along. But first of all, thank you so much. Good afternoon, and really looking forward. And if anybody wants to add anything before, please further ado. And thanks, Varun, for the opportunity. Cool. Should I get started?
Absolutely, Satish. Go ahead.
Okay, cool. I'm just going to share my screen, guys. Just a minute. Okay. I hope you're all able to see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, great. Give me a minute. So guys, when I'm in the screen sharing mode, I'm able to see only a few of you. So if anybody has any thoughts, questions, just jump in. And I generally love to see my audience. So I think I'm definitely only seeing a few of you here. So because I typically like to see the reaction on people's faces and then course correct and change things and so on. I know I don't have that luxury here today. So Varun, I'm just going to keep looking at you and read your face to the extent possible. Cool. Let's just get started. So today, when Varun and I connected a couple of weeks back, we said, I'll spend some time talking about this transformative shift in digital globally and definitely in India, all the more so in the last few years, from digital as a performance channel to digital becoming a mainstream branding media. I mean, traditionally, everything mainstream was kept for offline, and digital was always seen to be like a new niche. And thankfully, to a lot of you who belong to the Gen Zs and further on, thankfully, you don't have that baggage. So digital is now mainstream, and we are going to talk about that. I have many slides in this presentation, but a lot of those are just backup slides. So don't worry, there are just about 4-5 slides I have. And Warren, should I keep like 10-15 minutes towards the end and try to complete my presentation in the next half an hour?
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Okay, cool. So YOptima has been around since 11 years as a programmatic first marketing platform. But every 3 years, we had both the need and the opportunity to keep evolving ourselves. Obviously, evolution is very continuous, but every 3 years was almost a point of some discontinuous evolution as well. So while we continue to be a programmatic first marketing company even today, the problems that we were solving back then for a marketer versus the problems we are solving now over the last few years for marketers are far more evolved and far more different. And that's been the journey from YOptima, and in a way coinciding with the journey of digital as well, especially in India, which is our home market. 80% of what YOptima does happens in India. And this journey has been about has kind of witnessed the journey, the shift from digital as performance to digital as branding. And so today, YOptima is introduced to the market, to our customers, as a full funnel AI-powered demand generation company, demand creation that focuses on demand creation. We'll talk about all of that. There'll be very few of YOptima you'll see in this presentation, except for this slide, and then maybe there could be some more slides. So this is not a YOptima presentation, but I thought I'll just quickly introduce what we do. But if you see the tagline there, it's about making branding perform. Branding made performant, and therefore performance made scalable. So while some words here sound kind of very similar, but as we go along, we'll further qualify them and put more color, throw more color on it. With that, let me just get to my next slide. And this is really the topic today, which is digital's transformational shift from performance to branding. So I thought while we do all this, let's just first define what's this performance versus branding. And I would, of course, welcome any questions or comments from the other side as well. But by and large, and there are many ways and analogies one can give to branding versus performance. But by and large, one analogy can be, there is a tree, it's laden with fruits. You pluck the fruits, that's performance. And at some point you realize you're running out of fruits because the tree isn't growing, because you're probably not nurturing the tree. Or this season is over, and next season, if you don't nurture the tree, it's all gone. And so nurture the tree is branding. Plucking the fruit is performance. And there are many other analogies too. Another analogy I've heard from a client of ours is it's about go to the gym every day as a regimen, as a workout discipline. And that gradually, the change doesn't happen in one day. It takes time. But gradually, your body is well toned, you are much fitter, and it's much more enduring. That's akin to branding. Versus you go on a crash diet for the next 3-4 days, maybe 7 days, you're suddenly going to lose your weight. And then if you start eating again, it's not going to be really, going back to the same benchmarks. And that's performance. And so what we, from an analogy standpoint, and what we mean then is that performance is here and now, but it's almost like a switch on, switch off. You make the spend, you pay for it, you run your paid media spends, it drives some results, you stop doing those spends, the results basically come down. You've not really clearly established yourself in terms of brand and organic traffic that comes to your website, your app, or your store, if it's offline store or a marketplace. You invest in the brand, you invest in your product, you create a strong mind share in the minds of your audiences and customers, deliver, of course, great service to your customers, because after that, it's all about what your product does or what your service does. But even getting the customer to sample your product in the first place needs awareness of your brand and a category. And that's basically the branding spend that drives your sustained brand and organic traffic and gives you a good 30-40% of traffic, and sometimes even 90% of your traffic, which is purely inbound. And that's basically the investment you make in branding. And so that's nurture the tree versus pluck the fruit. Another way the industry calls it is demand gen versus demand capture. And today, over the last 3-4 years, the way this industry has shifted is what we're going to talk about, especially in India. And that was catalyzed by a lot of factors that came along very quickly compared to where it was 10 years ago. For an old head like me, I've come from days when digital used to be 2% of the entire ADEX of India, and branding was practically non-existent. Even 10 years ago, digital was only 10% of India's entire ADEX. And again, branding was very, very thin. Digital always meant performance and branding always meant offline. And if you look at it in the marketing funnel, Branding was top funnel, mid funnel, and performance basically being bottom funnel, which is the usual suspect channels such as Google Ads, Meta, and if you're a D2C brand, then marketplaces like Amazon Marketplace or the quick commerce marketplace and so on. So typically that's how the industry has associated performance. Performance means Google Ads, Meta, marketplaces, and branding means offline, TV, print, and other stuff. And that's where it all started shifting to now digital really being the full funnel, digital branding becoming mainstream. And in fact, the situation was so divergent until about a few years back that even today, many companies have completely different silos working in their own marketing team. One silo which focuses on the brand and brand related spend, another silo that focuses on performance and performance related spends, and they hardly are integrated into each other on a fairly continuous basis. And that's all thankfully changing amongst the early adopters, and today increasingly so. I'm happy to see that a lot of performance marketers now talk the brand performance continuum language. They talk the language of, I need branding to drive my next level of growth. And we are here to talk about that. So let's go back to the marketing funnel. Broadly, the marketing and sales funnel put together is demand gen, which is demand generation, demand creation, demand capture. So demand gen is drive awareness, first of all, of your own category, if your category is really not well understood. Like there are many new, like if you look at quick commerce, and obviously now it's super well understood category in the metros, but few years ago, there was a whole new category that was getting built. A decade back, online food ordering was a whole new category that was getting built, right? And so category creation, brand awareness, category awareness, driving awareness and consideration, not just making people know about your brand and top of the mind recall, but driving consideration whenever they have a need, driving relevance. All of that is demand gen. Demand capture is the typical classic bottom funnel where here are audiences who are in market. They are probably considering multiple other brands, not just yours, and then doing the right intervention at that bottom of the funnel to attract them to you, and then to capture them either in your store, website, or an app, and lead that to conversion is demand capture, which is about creating that purchase intent and making people convert. And that is classically what is performance. And then fulfilling the demand, which is sales, distribution, specific insight, on-site, in-store promotions that you do. That's basically sales. And all of this is, the boundary between them is certainly fluid, but by and large, you could still think of it as three different boxes in the broader funnel. With that, as we further go into how that shift is happening, let's first start with the numbers. And these numbers are primarily India numbers, wherever I've called out so, and then we've also, just to give you a sense, have looked at the global numbers as well. And I would have loved to actually do a quiz around that, but I thought that in half an hour, let me try to see what I can pack. And so I'm not doing the quizzing around it, but I thought let's just still talk about and give everybody in a number sense. So over the last 10 years, and before that, maybe I would add one anecdote. 2014 is when BJP came to the power, and Modi ji in many ways showed the power of digital to all of us Indians and the opposition parties, and really leverage that power of digital with offline press conferences gone, and really the digital conversations becoming the name of the game. And as that happened, over the last 10 years, one anecdote I have to share is how the political parties themselves have adopted digital so wholeheartedly, and they were otherwise the most laggards. Like 10 years ago, 2014, I remember very little spend had happened on digital around Indian elections. And even whatever had happened was with very low degree of awareness. The political party would give it to some agency, which would give it to some more solution providers, to affiliates, and so on. And by the time we had run this BJP campaign back then, 10 years ago, the price point we got from the next immediate affiliate was 3 rupees CPM, whereas I'm sure BJP was paying the original party, that is the vendor or the agency, 100 rupees CPM. So that was the amount of intermediary brokerage that people had eaten. And that also means the degree of awareness that the winning party had. To 2024, where YOptima had the opportunity to drive massively high digital SOV share of voice for a pure play RF reach frequency, and then capturing people in the right context campaign spends. And that's a publicly available information made available by Google. On Google alone, political parties put together spent 250 crore of media spend, which is fairly massive from a political party standpoint. Of course, they spend a lot more, perhaps offline still. But of that 250 crore, we saw two regional parties each spending 20 crore via us of media spend in barely a matter of 6 weeks. Because they realized their audiences are now increasingly on digital. Most of the voter base is digital. They have better capabilities to drive targeting and higher SOVs and reach and frequency. And in a way, it's a very disruptive revolution that has happened. The parties that were left behind, coincidentally, are also the ones who actually secured very little votes, relatively. And the ones who adopted were also the ones, by and large, that had a much higher vote share too. With that anecdote, let me come back to the numbers at large in India. India's total ADEX, the total digital plus offline ad expenditure in India over the last 10 years has grown 4x from 36,000 crore to 150,000 crore. And I deliberately put these numbers in crores because dollar itself changed substantially the forex ratios. And so it may not truly capture this growth. And that's why I just kept it at INR level. So 36,000 to 150,000, 4x growth in overall ADEX. But the biggest news here is the digital ADEX and the share of digital from sub 10%, 8 to 10%, to 65% of digital ADEX this year is going to be, of total ADEX this year, is going to be digital. And that clearly wouldn't have happened if digital hadn't become a mainstream branding media, because all of this cannot be explained by just performance spends. If you compare this with global numbers, globally, of course, ADEX has also grown. Today, it is $750 billion total global ADEX, and digital of that share is $450 billion. So obviously, there again, the numbers are kind of similar, and India therefore has now been pretty much at par with how the digital ad share globally also is. So we've adopted digital as wholeheartedly as any other market on an average. There is a small point I want to make a note here, and then we'll come back to it later. All of that digital branding spend today, invariably, a huge part of that is happening via programmatic. And this whole talk today is not about programmatic, so I'm not going to dwell too much on it. But programmatic is a buying model. Programmatic is not another solution. It's like you can either buy media through unautomated means, through manual means, or you can buy media through algorithmic or automated means, or biddable and programmatic means. And so it's a media buying model that today accounts for 45% of all of digital ADEX of India, which is almost all of, or 70% or 80% of all of branding media spend that's happening on digital, and that's done programmatically. And we'll talk about the benefits of programmatic a little later. We may not even get time to do that, so that's fine. But those are some numbers to keep in mind to put numbers in perspective as we go along. What are the key drivers that have driven this very nonlinear revolution? And I say this nonlinear because I have the baggage of seeing this over the last 20 years. And that's why when somebody like me look at it, I have seen the days of the S curve or that exponential curve rather, with very little changing for many, many years to then suddenly this kind of revolution. So what are the key drivers? Of course, our GDP has grown really well. Along with the GDP per capita has also grown. By and large, ad spends are a certain percentage of digital spend. So obviously, as GDP grows, these number grows too. But the other thing is the middle class has been lifted. There is a massive burgeoning middle class that we've seen growing, and the poverty, levels basically, the folks in poverty levels coming up, and all of that has also meant GDP per capita has grown, and therefore ad spend pretty much follows these trends. And so this is about overall ADEX, of course. I'm not just talking about digital here. Number two, greater disposable income. There's a whole new generation that has come in over the last 10 years. They are now in their first jobs, second jobs. They have greater disposable income. Their parents are relatively better off than the earlier generation's parents. And so these people now have greater disposable income, more discretionary spends, consumption-led economy, aspirational class. And all of that basically means These are more, they are not just only intent-based buys. And so ad spend has a lot of role to play in driving these aspirational consumption-led spends. And so clearly, AdX has followed that too, and they are almost like highly correlated to each other. More ads, more consumptions, more ads. Thirdly, digital itself. Our life is now digital. And I think nobody needs to be even, made aware of it. We all know this. And that also means easier access to purchase. And so at the tip of a finger, you're actually able to spend a few thousand rupees straight on your e-commerce store, or place an order on those apps and so on. And so clearly consumption has further gone up. And while that has happened in the metros, it's also penetrated into the hinterlands of the country as well. The agri-tech startups, for example, are seeing a great uptake and adoption in the hinterlands of India. The companies that are into selling tractors, they are seeing that too. So it's kind of everywhere. Of course, the pattern of what you buy changes, but it's everywhere. And those are seen in the numbers too, which is then driving the shift from offline to digital branding. And so as performance, digital has shifted from pure performance to pure branding. It's also come on the back of a shift from offline branding to digital branding. So it has actually seen monies coming into digital branding from both performance marketeers who are using digital for performance to now using digital for branding. And I've seen a shift from TV first marketeers, offline marketeers who realize that they've got to invest in digital branding from the only print only or TV only branding that they used to do. Because even audiences have shifted to digital. One such brand is like Kayam Churn, which is a 150-year-old brand. And somebody from my generation would remember a lot of their ads coming up on TV. The tagline used to be Bhavnagar ke Sheth Brothers ka Kayam Churn. And these guys would spend heavily on print and TV. And when I was talking to their next generation, who's now taking charge, they were like, boss, I cannot miss out on my digital audiences now because all my customers, the newer generation, is all digital first. And I'm shifting my mix from offline spends to a largely digital spend, or at least in a substantial way. And so our digital life today means 800 to 850 million Indians are now online, monthly active user base. This number just a few years ago was like half of this. And 2014, it was a relatively smaller number. It was still about 200 odd million Indians mostly. 2008, it was 30 million, by the way. That number I distinctly remember. I was at Comely. We had just started. And as an internet company, we were like, all that we've got is 30 million audiences. 30 million to 800 million plus, of course, 16 years, long time. But that's where we are. Average daily consumption of India is at its almost among the highest in the world. We are a glued to the mobile phone country than most other large countries in the world. And so 4 to 5 hours of average daily consumption. And I think these numbers are a little older, by the way. Apparently, these numbers are further gone up, and not necessarily that it's necessarily healthy, but we are probably spending 6.5 hours on an average on our phones. And of course, doing multiple stuff, productivity, entertainment, as well as transactions. The drivers for this, the offline branding to digital branding. So like I said, digital branding became big because it saw attraction from both sides, offline branding to digital branding, digital performance to digital branding. So what are the drivers for offline to digital branding? Why have monies in a $14-15 billion total ad market that India is? Why is it that digital now is $10 billion? Of the $10 billion that digital is, increasingly majority of that is digital branding because of these 4 reasons. And kind of obvious, I'm just putting it together maybe. But one is massive lift in digital consumption, digital GRPs. GRP is reach and frequency both. So we are not just having more and more people hooked onto digital, but for longer hours as well. So it's a generational shift accelerated by many events over the last many years. App Store revolution, our life suddenly becoming digital because most of our daily utilities are now mobile apps or mobile websites, and they are quickly available to us for consumption. The geo revolution, which made data really, really cheap, the cheapest in the world. And that also meant video becoming mainstream. COVID, which further accelerated our life, and we adopted digital like never before. And that basically means that whether you are an offline brand with an offline store and completely offline behavior like Raymond doing tailor-made shirts and pants where you actually walk into the Raymond store, doesn't matter. Your audiences are still thinking of you and finding you digitally. So it's research online, purchase offline, or it could be research offline, purchase online. And it's not just one two-step journey. It's a fairly complex intertwined journey, but digital is integral part of it, perhaps 70 to 80% influence coming through digital. And that basically means if you have to capture your audience, you have to be on digital. So that's driver number one. Driver number two, video first consumption. For a long time, especially I would say until 3 years ago, while marketers knew that their audiences are on digital, they struggled to capture our mind share on digital because it was all display ads largely. The concept of video ads was always there, but we were not consuming enough video. And therefore, where do I still capture you in a lean back mode, in a great storytelling format, which only video can do? Display can't do enough of it. I mean, of course, there are some amazing display ads and even out of home ads and so on. But by and large, video is a great storytelling format, lean back mode, large screen. All of that happened because of a video first consumption, particularly shooting to the roof in the pandemic over the last 3 years, where we saw our performance first clients suddenly talking our language, which was boss branding karo yaar, don't overdo performance, right? And so that happened on the back of multiple things. One, mobile reach in India today is greater than linear TV reach. Linear TV is the traditional TV, which means even for a traditional market here, they can't get enough reach through TV. In markets like UP and Bihar, mobile has larger reach than TV. Secondly, linear TV fast getting replaced by new ways of consumption, which is OTTs and CTVs. Connected TVs, which is a whole new device that's smart. There are 50 million connected TVs in India today, which is 200 million audiences, every family having roughly 4. So 50 million households, 200 million audiences, which means 25% of us are already on connected TV, and the new TVs are all connected TV. Because of that, you now have a screen in your home, you're sitting on a sofa or whatever you might be doing, relatively better attention, uninterrupted view, and that basically is a delight to the marketeers. And therefore, even a TV first marketer has to do digital and CTV, connected TV, because 25% of his audiences are anyways no more on linear TV. Cord cutters, cord shavers, cord nevers are the 3 terms that basically get talked about. And then OTT, which basically is your traditional TV consumptions anyways, is replaced by the randomly accessed television content, which is television or otherwise, which is OTTs. And all of that has made this great new media available to marketeers, which they were always waiting on. Third, it's audience targeted because it's digital, which means you no more need to do very high level, proxy level targeting, saying, yaar, ye channel agar hai, KBC hai, so maybe my audience is the KBC audience, and with some 50% probability or 20% probability and so on. Instead of that, you can actually do audience targeting. On the same channel, you can choose to target somebody and not choose to target somebody else. Maybe only target men, only target women, not just on CTV. I'm talking about CTV, that's not possible because CTV is a household view, and there it's done based on who's the logged in user. So CTV targeting is not necessarily great in terms of demographic targeting, but on the mobile, absolutely. On the laptop, absolutely. But one other interesting stuff on why this move is happening from linear TV to CTV is also hyperlocal targeting. So there is an advertiser, a prospect of ours called Narayana Schools. Narayana Schools has 800 plus schools all over India. And these are K-12 schools. These are schools where the kid starts right from KG. They clearly know that even if they were to spend this money entirely on TV, it's going to have massive wastage of spends because a parent is not going to send their very young kid to a school 10 kilometers away. So that's a waste of money. Yes, it'll have some residual effect in terms of mind share creation, but you can actually do a lot better with your money by doing hyperlocal targeting, which a broadcast linear TV can't present. Connected TV can because it's a digital TV. So that entire media spend almost entirely has shifted from doing it on TV and print to doing it on connected TV first, CTV first. They also, of course, do mobile as well. And this is not just a story of one Narayana schools. It's happening across the board where CTV is becoming a platform of choice. One, because 25% of your audiences are anyways not targetable via linear TV. Two, because it gives you hyperlocal targeting on top. And so, but this is just CTV. When it comes to mobile, there are many more targeting capabilities. When it comes to desktop, many more targeting capabilities because these are dedicated devices, which means you can target people based on their purchase patterns, based on their demographics, lifestyle, many other stuff. For example, one of the fintech brands, not fintech, BFSI brands, is able to target people based on our PhonePe and PayU consumption patterns made available at a segment level by PhonePe and PayUs, something that was not available otherwise. Or there is one real money gaming brand that's able to target using PayU and PhonePe's data, all those audiences, customers who have been paying to play Rummy over the last 1 year. And so all of this data means you're only targeting those select audiences and saving on your monies, and in fact, bidding a lot higher for them, because instead of putting average targeting to everybody at an average price, you are able to actually put a much higher price, increase your SOV to your select target audience. So much better way of selecting who you want to target. Last but most important is measurability. The traditional brand marketing had this classic saying, I know my ad spend, worked 50%. I just don't know which 50% worked for me. And obviously that was a gross generalization, but the offline world has very broken, very high level measurability, which is measured based on a panel. Even if the panel gives you some measurability, there is no clear way to influence your media buying at a sharper level. You're only broadly doing media planning at a media mix level, probability level, you're improving your probabilities and so on. Cut to digital, everything is measurable. And it's not measurable only at the end of the campaign. It's measurable during the campaign. This whole terminology of post-campaign eval is kind of outdated. Why do you need to wait until the end of the campaign to evaluate your campaign? Well, in offline world, that was the way. Anyways, you didn't have those options. In the digital world, there is no post-campaign eval only. Yes, you still do post-campaign eval because you are looking at a holistic view of the entire campaign and so on. But you're actually evaluating everything intra-campaign, and you're not just evaluating it, you're optimizing for it. Because today there are tools that are making available brand lift intra-campaign. And all of you have studied Google Ads, there is BLS and brand lift study. And then there is search lift study, which is not even panel-based. It's actual behavioral change that has happened. So brand lift is based on surveys. Search lift is based on actual behavioral shift. And so when we run campaigns today for our clients, we are not just measuring brand lift and search lift, but we are optimizing for it. And there is another framework called conversion lift, where you are actually measuring the conversion difference between audiences who got exposed versus audiences who were not exposed, and then optimizing the campaign accordingly. And that actually completes the puzzle in a big way. So it's not just massive GRPs and video first consumptions giving you better quality inventory and therefore better recall and better storytelling to audience targeting. But I would say the ultimate clincher has been measurability. And obviously it's not that it's a done game. There is a lot more that still needs to evolve under measurability as well. But these are the key drivers on why monies have shifted in a big way from offline to digital branding. And it's not just offline marketeers. There are also the digital native marketeers, which is the digital first marketeers, the performance first marketeers who have shifted to branding on digital. So if you look at this spectrum, the continuum you see, there are broadly three kinds of marketeers you would see. On the extreme left, there are digital nascents, as we call them. Digital nascents are the traditional offline marketeers who are shifting to digital branding from offline branding, the ones we spoke about in the last few slides. So their mix is shifting from linear TV to connectivity and mobile. On the extreme right are the digital natives, which are advertisers like Grow, GROWW, or a GoDaddy or an Oyo, whose business is still fairly digital first. Grow is even more digital first than Oyo actually, and so is GoDaddy. And for them, digital initially meant only performance. They were hardly, like GoDaddy used to do a lot of branding on TV. Grow started doing branding on TV later, but the first thing they started doing was from digital performance to digital branding. And Grow is one of our clients too. And so these guys shifted monies from just Google Ads and Meta for performance to programmatic and the overall full funnel paradigm for branding and branding-led growth. It's triggered by the need for demand gen, because otherwise, if you only keep doing pluck the fruit, then your tree is over. And so it's triggered by the need to invest in top and mid funnel so that you expand your bottom funnel. What it means is create more and more inbound demand, which is much higher quality demand, converts a lot better, than just keep putting money on those bids, on those keywords and convert them. Because even within that, you have two kinds of keywords. So the digital natives, the reason for shift is as follows. With digital natives, at some point, they started realizing a Pareto, that 70% of their Google search spends, search marketing spends, would drive only 30% conversions. Because those 70% spends were going on unbranded keywords, generic keywords. For example, for grow, that would be an example of online brokerage app rather than somebody saying grow or grow app. These are unbranded keywords, generic keywords. They eat 70% of your spends, but convert pretty badly because the user doesn't have your brand in mind. He's going to be tentative about many other things. For all you know, he's not even maybe searching for online brokerage right now. All in all, there is a Pareto of 70-30, 70% spends driving 30% conversions, and 30% spends driving 70% conversions on brand queries, brand keywords. So these marketers soon realized that they were hitting a plateau in their bottom funnel if they don't expand their brand keyword volume. And brand keyword volume apne aap nahi badhne wala hai. You have to invest in the brand, make the top of the mind share, drive consideration so that more and more people start searching for your brand and associate it with the product you are selling, and not just, in a generic way. And as that happens, your overall media mix improves substantially because of two reasons. Now, more and more traffic is coming to you because of direct and brand traffic, number one. Two, because your brand is much more visible, your conversion rates are improving. So even the earlier conversion rates on generic keywords are now improving. So it's actually a three-pronged effect. Brand search volumes going up, therefore your better converting traffic going up. Your brand search volumes are not just going up, even the conversion rates on your brand keywords are going up because people now put your brand much more favorably. And your conversion rates on generic keywords are also improving. Because of that, the performance-first marketers, the digital performance-first marketers have adopted and have been adopting digital branding in a big way. So that's the digital natives. The middle ones are digitally mature brands, those who've come from this side or this side and have got it all. And they are some of the largest marketers in the world. That also includes CPG, FMCG categories. And they are all ICICI banks of the world. And they, of course, have got the story already. And they have been doing omni-channel focus. And then they're measuring everything in a unified way. This is what has made digital branding mainstream. So now I have a lot more details, but I'm going to kind of now just skip through this. But basically, this is detailing out pluck the fruit versus nurture the tree. Nurture the tree is about measuring brand awareness, consideration, and preference. As I spoke about, there are many more measurabilities available. There are frameworks for that. Plug the fruit, you are all aware of Google Ads and Meta. Why does plug the fruit eventually lead to also nurture the tree and full funnel marketing? Is because you soon realize your bottom funnel is either becoming limiting. It's no more driving growth. No matter how much more money you put in, your cost per acquisition are only growing non-linearly because your conversion rates aren't improving and your brand traffic isn't improving. There is another thing called brand versus category development index. In markets or sub-markets, like some regions where your brand is strong and category is weak, you need to grow your category. That's again category awareness-led full funnel effort. In some other markets where your brand is weak and category is strong, no matter what you do at the performance bucket at the bottom funnel, you're not going to improve your game and drive your growth until your brand becomes strong. Another reason your bottom funnel is probably already exhausted. You're doing too much of bottom funnel already, but no new brand search volumes are coming up, or your bottom funnel is too crowded and therefore your conversion rates are suffering. And all of these is the reason why they are adopting the new world. This is further one last slide onto why this whole full funnel shift is going programmatic, because programmatic uniquely brings, as opposed to traditional media buying, like one could say, digital branding karenge, why does it need to be programmatic? The reason it's becoming programmatic is programmatic allows for a much more efficient way of buying media for your full funnel campaigns, because it offers you better targeting. It offers you unified frequency, which means unified reach frequency. It basically optimizes your frequency histogram, better price discovery because of the auction model, and so on and so forth. And maybe I don't have time to kind of get into too much details today, but happy to either do a follow-up session or take on any questions. But the key takeaway on this slide is digital media buying for branding is now increasingly getting replaced by this new, more automated way of media buying or algorithmic way of media buying, where media is not seen in isolation. It's a confluence of media, audience data, and tech and AI, all of it put together, which is actually driving the overall efficacy for a marketer. I just want to take one last slide here, which is a case study to top it all as to how marketers across the world are seeing the benefits of this. So this is a case study with one of our clients called ASBL, which is a new age real estate brand that started in Hyderabad last year, about they started 5-6 years back. They started with us 15 months back. And the entrepreneur here is a 35-year-old second generation entrepreneur who created this ASBL brand out of his father's company, Ashoka Builders. After the father, he took on, created a whole new brand called ASBL. And they have been on a spree of constructing real estate properties in Hyderabad. And Ajitesh soon realized, and this is a case study that's going to be soon co-published with Google. So Ajitesh, the founder, realized that he is going to be on a massive, real estate building spree. But if he looks at each of his project independently, he's going to keep spending money on the performance spends via Google Ads and Meta for every single new project, which is at a different location within Hyderabad. Hyderabad only, targeting people all over the world, though, those who want to buy a property in Hyderabad. He realized that his performance is going to be very costly because every single campaign he's going to keep doing performance spends on generic keywords and then expect that people will convert and so on. And so he was at a point of 70-30, the Pareto. 70% of his spends were driving 30% leads because they were generic keywords. 30% spends were driving 70% because they were brand keywords, but the brand volumes were insignificant. That's when we ran a full funnel strategy over a 6 months time frame. It created some really good impact. Their brand search volumes went up by 3.3x, which means consumers, audiences who are now thinking of buying a property were not just searching real estate in Hyderabad or properties in Gachibowli, but ASBL loft project in Gachibowli, ASBL projects near me, and so on and so forth. That's 3.3x lift in brand search volumes. Not just that, conversion rates improved 175%. His brand keywords conversion rates improved from 12% to 33%. Unbranded search keyword conversion rate improved from 3% to 10%, and that created a double impact. Your brand search volumes are going up, your conversion rates are improving everywhere. And this has really shifted the orbit for them, where their performance spends now can be actually lower than before, and yet they are generating a lot more overall lead quality volume. So that's basically the concept of full funnel marketing and performance branding or branding for performance. And this is really the shift that's happening. This is just an example of that shift as it's happening from digital as primarily a performance channel to digital as a full funnel channel with branding first while it's driving performance. This whole concept is called performance branding. And in some other circles, it's called brand performance, whatever it might be. But basically, this now underscores how digital has become a fairly mainstream channel. Also, as you can see it in the numbers, 65% of overall India's ADEX, also global ADEX. With that, I'm just going to take a pause, guys. This is pretty much the end of my presentation for today.
Super. Thank you very much, Satish, for sharing these insights. Very fascinating for us to sort of absorb. Folks, do you have questions for Satish? You can just raise your hands and ask him. Other questions? Come in, Satish. I'll just give you. I'll just kick off by maybe giving you one perspective. The last campaign that I managed on Maggie Nobles was in 2014 and early 15, and we used to have a mandate from global that we should be spending at least X% of our monies on digital, and we would be very, very unhappy with that mandate because there was no way that we could justify it in our heads, that money is going to be well used. So it used to be a real struggle at that moment of time, even to sort of visualize like how we're going to spend that money. And so it was very fascinating to see how much things have changed over the last few years. One question that I, before people sort of asking, one question that I was personally curious about is how do these large brands decide how much money to spend on branding versus how to spend on performance, and how does this calculation sort of evolve in their journey?
Yeah. Actually, it's a great question, and it doesn't have one simple answer clearly, and I know you appreciate that too. But there are different ways marketers look at this. One is, if it's a performance first marketer, although it's a digitally mature brand, let's just say, but let's say if it's Grow, or it's let's say a Bluestone or a No Broker or any of those digital first also, they still do a good degree of performance spends as an always on spends, but they keep a tab on the share of search volume that they are operating at, brand search volume they are operating at, vis-a-vis the category search volume that they see. And so they look at the BDI, CDI metrics to decide on the fact that, boss, these are the markets I first of all even need to invest on. And then they keep tracking how their consideration baseline, both based on digitally measured numbers, as well as numbers measured on Brand Track and other tools that are coming from Nielsen and Kantars of the world. They keep an eye on, did this spend lead to my top of the mind brand recall in a very quantifiable way, lifting? And as that got lifted, how did it impact both my scale, the incremental scale, and the conversion rates? I mean, basically search volumes and conversion rates driving the incremental scalability. Broadly, there are various models they use to do that. So media mix modeling, of course. MMT is a match market testing model. In the MMT model, what they typically do is, whether it's a digital first marketer or offline one, is to look at 3 test markets and then do an isolated test to say that for the next 3 months, the marketing activities I'm going to do in these 3 markets are going to be constant, pre and post. And then I'm only going to intervene the additional change. The only change over a 3-month time frame is going to be the heavy digital activity I'm going to do, and see how that led to, in a very number-driven economics way, the lift in search volumes in terms of brand search volumes, the lift in actual footfalls, which are also measurable, and the lift in conversions that happened, and then applying the incremental spend to the incremental scale that they saw. And if that looks promising, then they take this strategy across many more markets as well. However, this is also a function of your current baseline. If your current top of the mind awareness or the spawns are at 20% versus at 70% versus somewhere else, the results that you get are going to be very different with the same level of spends, because you are facing the challenge of saturation as well. And so they also recognize the fact that from going from 20 to 30% baseline will have a substantial improvement and at a relatively lower cost than going from 50 to 80% too. And thereby then the kind of activities they do change, the media they choose could also change, and they may also do a lot more on IPL and those heavy duty media buying around specific events than a fairly always on spends that somebody at a lower baseline would also do. So of course, there are a ton of variables, but a simpler answer, a smaller answer would be choose a few test markets, measure the impact, learn from it, and then scale it up further.
Super. Very helpful. Guys, any questions for Satish today? Go ahead, Samarth.
Hello, sir. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Actually, my question was regarding brand building. Like, for example, if there's a furniture brand who is very new to digital marketing and like they don't have any presence on online platforms. So how can we go forward with that?
Yeah.
Make their presence and to generate those leads.
Yeah. See, most brands, when they are in their very early stage, whether they are converting, whether the ultimate fulfillment is happening offline or is happening online, so long as they know their audiences are at least going to be online for research, even though the conversions may happen offline, so long as they know the audiences are going to be on digital and their exploration of my product is going to be on digital, even if not the purchase, it would be prudent for all of them to start on digital performance first. And so all of them just do that. The first starting point, other than the social media based interventions, creating the right vibe in an earned media way, is to also leverage paid media, spend on search, spend on meta. By and large, there are four pillars of the strategy. First pillar is search and intent traffic. So search and marketplace, because on the marketplace, you come with a strong intent. Second is create a good vibe and drive discovery and an impulse buy, even though the intent is not there. That's where social media comes in. Third is remarketing, that you happen to have people coming onto your website any which way, remarket them. All these three are classic performance strategies that all such brands would start with. The only brands who will not do performance spends at all would be the ones where audiences are not even involved in the purchase cycle, even for research online. Like ultimately, just say, let's say the brand like a snacking brand used in schools. So there is a brand called Crax, C-R-A-X. Now C-R-A-X, last we connected with them 2 years back, hardly had any spend on digital. Because people are not really searching for cracks to do a research about cracks and then say, chalo, main school mein jaake I'll buy that snack, right? Everything was very impulse, directly offline. So for such brands, not doing performance on search was fine. But even those brands ultimately started driving distribution via Amazon marketplaces, and then they went on to marketplace first, right? But by and large, every brand that has the audience either purchasing online or researching online would start with these three pillars of performance ads. So three pillars being search ads and marketplace ads, intent traffic. Second being capture impulse traffic. Social media is great for that. Number three, remarketing. Those are the hygiene strategies. So it's always a good to start with that. Then they start realizing, yaar, mere conversion rates are screwed up. I'm spending a lot more money. My competition is probably getting it far easy. And my overall audience scale and conversion rates are both suffering. And that's when they start to realize that I have to invest in branding, which then becomes not just the fourth pillar, it actually becomes the foundation of your media buying, because that fourth pillar lifts all your other three channels. And that's why I don't call it a fourth pillar, I call it the foundation. Just that you lay that foundation, you may lay that foundation a little later also. You don't need to necessarily start with branding spends first. Unless you are operating in a highly competitive market, in which case, and you have decent amount of money to spend, in which case starting with branding spend actually is quite wise.
Would Greg be an example of that?
I think correct would be. I mean, I would say for a long time, they drove their initial journey kind of differently, but at some point they started creating these amazing brand interventions. I think some people love it, some people hate it, but and sometimes the product itself gets very mixed feedback. But yeah, absolutely. Super. In a highly cluttered market, or in a market where your category itself is very small, the day zero strategy being branding actually becomes necessary, because people haven't understood your categories. Ultimately, what is branding? It's communicating who you are, what your product is, what that category is to your intended audience. So no matter how great your product is, if your audiences are not getting to know of it at scale, then you will have to do these interventions. So go ahead.
Super. Chanchal, you had a question.
Yeah. Hi. Thanks for the opportunity. Good afternoon, everyone. So I just wanted to know one thing. Like as Satish sir mentioned, that that brand ASBL achieved a good number of brand searches, which resulted in good number of conversion rates, which they were not getting from non-branded searches, right? So in which scenario you will suggest brands to go for non-branded or generic campaigns?
Okay.
In case if the brand is new and they are not having that amount or the volume of brand searches, then should they be going first for generic campaigns and then increase the awareness, then go for brand searches, or what should be the strategy for them?
Got it. Got it. Let me clarify a few things. One is that as a day zero, if this is your day zero and your brand is not well known, but your category is well understood, which means you at least have category search volume coming in. Your brand search volume may be zero, but your category search volume exists. Then the first thing you would still do is run those search campaigns on the category, right? On the generic keywords. Once you start realizing that generic keywords are driving my initial decent amount of search volume, the next thing you do is run some video interventions, video-based communication, so that your initial flow of brand search volume also starts coming in, or it comes in because of word of mouth too. I told my friend, and now he starts searching for ASBL too, and so on, right? In ASBL's case, there was 3 different impacts I spoke about. The brand search volumes got lifted. The brand traffic by design for every single brand in the world, almost, brand and organic traffic by design always will have far higher conversion rate than an unbranded traffic. Okay, no matter which brand you are, right? So one is brand search volumes went up. As brand volumes go up and it's a better converting traffic, you are getting one lift in terms of your bottom funnel, in terms of your lead volume. 2, because your brand is much more visible and much more favored now, and it's favored also because somebody had a good experience on your site. Somebody had a good experience on your site visit as well. So all of that also had a rub off. But as that happens, your conversion rates, even on the brand keywords, went up. And because the brand is much more visible, now when somebody sees real estate property in Hyderabad, in Gachibowli, and you see a ASBL listing there, you recognize the brand and you have a higher chance of converting in terms of filling up a lead. So that's conversion rates improvement on unbranded keywords. In fact, there is a correlation. I had a graph, I didn't get a chance to show it. There is a graph which we generically seen. If you look at x-axis being consideration baseline, meaning top of the mind brand recall and a preference and your preference to put that in the consideration set. If you see a consideration baseline on x-axis and conversion rates on the y-axis, there's a very strong correlation between conversion rates improvement to consideration baseline improvement, which is the whole science of branding for performance. Branding for performance essentially means I improve my consideration baselines, I improve my conversion rates, I also improve my overall baselines as well, overall search volumes also. So I didn't exactly get your question entirely. So if I did not answer your question, please, just re-articulate. But in ASBL's case, it was a 3-pronged impact that got created.
I would like to have a follow-up question here. What measures did you take or your team took to improve the brand searches?
Yeah. So I think ultimately it comes down to the media you buy, more video, more spends on YouTube versus OTTs than just display ads. Display ads are very here and now. How many of us really remembered seeing a display ad, right? Versus how many of us remember seeing a video ad? Because video is just a better storytelling format. So one is planning it in such a way that you are actually driving and selecting more high impact media. Okay, that's one. Second is audience targeting. In audience targeting, it's about zeroing down on relatively the closest to the bullseye audience of that market here. Now here, YOptima has built a tech called Sonograph, which looks at your current customers, your previous customers, and finds out their audience personas, unique audience personas, to discover which is the new audience that best matches with your customers. For example, through Sonograph, we help discover for GoDaddy that 80% transactions on the GoDaddy website were never done by SMEs as they had been thinking, but it was actually done by web designers and SEO professionals in a non-DIY SME market that India is. So targeting the right audience is key. So media, choosing the right media, targeting the right audience. Third is creative communication. So typically you test multiple creative concepts, you see which creative is sticking better in the test spends, and then you promote that creative a lot more up to the right frequencies, because frequency of communication matters. And then gradually you also start realizing there is fatigue and you change those creatives too, and you improve the communication as well. Or you funnel the audiences down. Somebody who was at the top of the funnel needed awareness communication. But somebody who's now, the cohort who is now at the middle of the funnel doesn't need too many of your awareness communications anymore. The communication needs to be much more about driving product benefit and consideration. So the communication also needs to change and get layered. So it's ultimately a confluence of audience and audience targeting, media that you choose, and the way you build the frequencies and the creative communication. And at the center of it is measurability. Ultimately, jo bhi kar rahe ho, you cannot predict how something will perform. So keep measuring, keep testing, and keep optimizing.
Thanks a lot. That was really insightful.
Thank you.
Super. More questions, guys? We have him. Yes, Megha, go for it.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. So Satish, my question is, like, when we talk about branding, we are here referring to awareness and the consideration part. So far we have studied the meta ads, not yet started with programmatic. So I would like to know how the branding is the performance wise, mainly I'm asking how branding is different on meta and like from programmatic, that I want to know.
So, one of the things I said earlier is a lot of the marketeers, until they really get this very well, think of Meta as different and programmatic as different and Google Ads is different. That's not the right comparison, first of all. Programmatic is a way of media buying. Programmatic's comparison is with manual way of media buying. So by and large, there are three ways of media buying: biddable media, programmatic media, and a very manual way of media buying, right? But biddable is actually highly overlapped with programmatic, and that's why programmatic can encompass biddable. Like YouTube is bought with biddable, called a biddable media, it's also programmatic. So by and large, programmatic means anything where you can choose to buy this impression right now if you want to, and if you don't want to, you can in real time choose not to buy. As opposed to traditional media buying where you buy in bulk. You say my ads will appear on all of Times of India for the next 10 days, right? So one is that. So programmatic's true comparison is with comparison as in what is anti-programmatic? Meta is not anti-programmatic. Anti-programmatic is offline way of media buying, the traditional way of media buying. But I get your question. Your question is not necessarily about Meta versus programmatic. Your question is Meta versus other different media sources that are there for brand building, like YouTube, like OTT.
Right.
So I'm assuming your question is that. So the thing is this, Meta and particularly Instagram has a very distinctive audience characteristics. There is certain audiences that are hooked on to Insta, perhaps far more than they're hooked on to the YouTube kind of media or the OTT kind of media. So one difference that we do see is who your audience is. And if your audience is typically a Gen Z, or your audience is hooked, a certain kind of audiences that are most likely to be spending a lot more time on Insta, then Insta does become a preferred mechanism of media buying, number one. That's purely because of audience. But the other thing is the media, the type of media they consume. YouTube is one where you are onto that media for a little longer than Insta, where you're actually flipping a lot more. So video in-stream inventory is relatively limited on Insta, whereas in-stream video inventory is far higher available on YouTube. So even the political parties that spent money in these elections had much higher spends on YouTube, followed by Insta, followed by display. So in terms of format hierarchy, large format video, most preferred, YouTube and OTTs, quicker videos, reels, the next one, and display becoming the third one. So long story short, Insta and Meta family currently gets a lower share of branding spends. But they get a higher share of performance spends, especially for products that are smaller ticket size and impulse led. Because Insta and Meta are less driven by intent. They are much more impulse driving products. They are more about discovery. Man kiya, dig gaya, le liya. So it works very well for products that are shorter ticket size, smaller ticket size, and more impulse led. Meta does relatively weaker performance for intent-led product, especially if they have higher ticket size. Search outperforms Meta then. But Meta outperforms search for lower ticket products that are more impulse-led. So that's another distinction we see.
Yes, thank you so much. That answers my question.
Cool.
Awesome. Any more questions, guys? We're almost at the end of our time here. Anything else that you guys want to ask him? Yes, so I'll go for it.
Hello, sir. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah. So good afternoon. It's a pleasure to meet you, sir. So I just want to know how can a brand maintain consistency across different channel and a touch point? For example, if I'm running a brand, working in a brand, if they give me like you have to, run a campaign in Meta, Google, also e-com. So how can I maintain the consistency? So this was my question. Can you?
You mean consistency, right? You're talking about
Yes,
consistency.
yes.
I think it's a fantastic question. And I think there is a lot of homework that brands actually put in terms of building their brand strategy, brand architecture, brand persona, and how their communication should be. And while it's consistent in one way, but how can it be transcoded in the right way for different formats and different media formats and different media vehicles also. I think it's a whole, different exercise that they do, so to say. That being said, ultimately it comes down to what your brand is, what it means, what should the takeaway be for your intended target audience? Are you creating relevance in that target audience's mind about who you are? So while the ad formats may change, video versus display versus whatsoever, and yes, because of that, your CTAs may also change. Your awareness ads will have a very different CTA than your consideration ads, which talk about USPs and product benefits, to your bottom funnel ads, which are about CTA, and CTA doesn't always need to be about discounts, right? So while the ad narrative changes, who you are as a brand, who are you talking to in terms of your intended TG, what are your differential characteristics, unique characteristics, by and large, according to me, are almost preserved, no matter how how the ad may change. And so that's a work that happens at an overall brand strategy level. And I'm sure Owen probably might be able to add a lot more into this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, Satish, the points you make are all sort of valid, and to some extent, I think consistency matters a lot because in the old brand building theory, it's always believed that any advertising works best when people are able to understand an ad is from a particular brand, even if no words are said, even if in some cases no music is heard, and so on and so forth. So a classical example would be Dove. Dove ads tend to be, they'll have a white background, they'll not have a celeb, they'll have real people, and they'll be talking. And when I say real people, real in the sense that they won't even look like very good looking people necessarily, at least not in conventional ways. So anytime you see it, even for half a second on YouTube, or a Instagram story that comes in, then you quickly know it is a Dove ad. So even if you don't understand that this is a new serum from Dove, at least you know that there is a Dove product which is there. So therefore, some benefit you get out of that ad. So consistency sort of helps in both from an overall sort of building the brand distinctively, but it also helps from a media standpoint as well. And so initially, I think that as much as I can share, we were very worried about maintaining consistency across different channels. And I can tell you that over the last few years, people have had to accept that that level of consistency that you could deliver when the number of channels and the number of screens was less is just kind of becoming impossible today. Great example is influencers. All influencer partnerships use brands in their own ways and in their own tones and personalities, and it's very hard to always find that match between what a brand personalities and what the influencer personalities. And even if you try and impose your personality on how the influencer does, typically you end up doing a self goal, because if the influencer is not allowed to sort of present it in their own ways, then then you're basically sort of ensuring that the partnership is going to be a failure. So to that extent, I think that there is some level of inconsistency that is now acceptable, and it is now accepted that is going to happen but still, I think the old principle, to the extent that you can deliver consistency, I think that helps in. And every brand has a brand playbook that defines what it is that the brand can do and what it is that a brand can't do. So it will be in the look and feel of it. It will be in the storytelling of it. It will be, in some cases, it will even be the humor of it. So for example, a brand can say that, look, we want to be funny, but we don't want to be sarcastic. We don't want to be slapstick. So those kinds of specifications also sort of come in, and that then sort of comes in terms of, if you want to be a fairly fun brand, then how do you really bring that out in a 6-second reel? It's very difficult, but of course, then the adjustments are made in. So to that extent, there's once again, no great answer there, but consistency does help bring distinctiveness to the brand, and the more time you have engaging with the consumer, the more that story really comes out. And so the best way to think about it is a 30 or a 45-second film will be a little bit more attuned to a brand's tone and personality, whereas an influencer partnership or a display ad or even a 3 or 6 second reel might be very, very sort of adjusted to what the format needs, right? So that is generally been the way in which these things have evolved in.
Thank you so much, sir, for your insight.
Super. Thank you so much, Satish, for taking time out. It's been a lovely session. Lots of things for me to learn in as well. And look forward to bringing you back in maybe around programmatic itself, which I know a lot of people would be interested in learning more about.
Thank you so much. I really loved this, and thanks a lot for the opportunity, and thanks for being a wonderful audience, guys. Really enjoyed this.
Awesome. Thank you very much, guys. Take care.
Take care. Have
Bye-bye.
a good weekend. Bye.
Hey folks, Megashri here. Yeah, I'm so sorry, but I can't keep my camera on right now. But yeah, thank you so much for joining. We all can start dropping off, and you will be getting a mail after this, and then would request all of you to acknowledge the same. Yeah. Bye bye. Have a good weekend.
Bye, Megashri. Thank you.